Hello everybody, welcome back to another video. I'm hoping you guys are all having a fantastic day. So in today's video, we'll be talking about a large cold fall air mass that will be making its way into the United States by the end of this work week and into this upcoming weekend. Accompanying this very strong air mass of cold air, there will be a powerful autumn storm. The models are increasingly painting as a impactful and powerful system. So I want to start talking immediately about this without further ado. So let's go back to our 0 and look at the 2-meter temperature anomalies. This is in Celsius. So basically anywhere you have the blue colors, it is below average. Anywhere it is red, it is above average for this time of the year based on 1981 to 2010 climatology. All right, so as I put this forward, notice that right now we are still dealing with a kind of an in-between pattern, right? So we just had a very warm air mass across, and we still do across a good portion of the central United States. We do have a little bit of cool air that will be making its way into the northeast and southeastern Canada. The Midwest will catch a little bit of this across Wednesday and into Thursday. Notice though, the only area of cool weather this week will either be the northeast, southeastern Canada, or where thunderstorms flare up across the mid to southern United States. Elsewhere, look at Montana, Wyoming, Idaho, we have a pretty extraordinary heat air mass developing. So if you recall, the first long-range outlook I did I think a week ago at this point, there was a sign that there could be a pretty large cool-off at around this midweek, but that has ever since eroded, as I talked about in the last video, and you could see it's been replaced by just pretty much average air, so at least it's not sweltering heat across the Midwest and Northeast. But the upper plains, you could see the west and even the southern coastal United States, but really especially the west here, are going to be heating up, and it's going to be a very, very strong heat wave. If you look at some of these 2-meter temperature shaded, it's going to be hundreds well into Canada and across much of North Dakota, South Dakota, and Montana, Wyoming, there are going to be hundreds as well. And this is because we have a high pressure that is contributing with a little bit of that cool across the southeast, but it's stubborn, it's not moving out of the way, and all this warm air is being pumped up very far north. Going back to the 2-meter temperature anomaly, you may be like, okay, where is this cool down? And it comes, but it comes at the foot of a powerful system that with all this warm air, all this warm, moist Gulf of Mexico air that reaches very far north, it allows this very strong system to develop, and as low pressures spin counterclockwise, it taps into that Canadian northern air, and it brings a cool down into the early part of the weekend for much of the United States. Notice that by Friday in the morning, even in the afternoon, it's barely visible, this cool down. It's beginning to show, but it's still very warm, especially across the west. The heat now moves and shoves its way into the eastern United States and Midwest. It's very brief, the heat. Again, the worst of it will be across Montana, North Dakota, Wyoming, and southern Canada, where it's considered to be in a blocking pattern. And notice a little coolness across the south from cloud cover and rain. By the time we get into Saturday of the 23rd, we see this cool air mass beginning to spread into the Great Lakes, the upper Midwest. But it's an interesting one because it's developing as it goes to the south. It's not a well-developed cold air mass that's swooping in from the north. It's one that develops at the backside of this system. If I were to show you this precipitation graphic, you could see it right there. That system, there's that low pressure associated with it, and there's that cold air sweeping down. If you're not familiar with reading these charts, this may be not very intuitive, but that's why we have the 2-meter temperature anomaly graph to show us a clear defined area of blueness, which again, based on the key readings here, is almost 12 to 16 degrees below average in terms of Celsius. So that is, the hair's getting a little long. So that is very, very, very chilly. And notice that as I put this into motion, this thing expands. So Sunday, right? Saturday evening into Sunday, it's reaching out down into Kentucky, Tennessee, Missouri. I want to preface immediately that this air mass, this cool air mass, will unfortunately not be making its way across the western United States. Those areas are going to be dealing with heat throughout most of this time frame. Good news is, at least the eastern areas of the west, so Utah, Wyoming, Colorado, Arizona, New Mexico, even portions of Nevada, maybe extreme eastern California, are going to be dealing with quite a bit of abundant monsoon moisture, so that will be contributing to some relief in terms of rainfall, but the heat will definitely be stifling there. But again, it's always where things go up, they must go down. And we have very cool temperatures that are beginning to spread now into Sunday. So a week from right now, if you're dealing with the really strong temperatures right now across your area and it's Sunday, and you were talking about it today about how it's so hot and you wish it would be cooler, by next week, these daytime temperatures across the Great Lakes and Northern Plains are going to be the coldest we've seen since spring by far. Notice some areas don't get out of the 60s, potentially 50s across Iowa, Wisconsin, Michigan, Iowa, Illinois, Indiana into the 60s and 70s. The heat's getting stuck again across the south, but especially the west. You can't see it as well on these the actual Fahrenheit readings because you may be looking at this and being like, oh, 89, 88, those little thermometer readings, that's not bad, but again, based on what they are normally used to, that is extremely above average. Notice this cool air mass Sunday, it's really already there taking its place and taking the heat's place, and it's expansive again. In Nebraska, Kansas, Oklahoma gets in on this, even the southern United States, the Great Lakes, the Northeast, and it sticks around for quite a little bit. There we go, that by Tuesday into Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, we start seeing the heat return across the northern plains and southern Canada, but it begins to shift the cool down into the southern United States. So, some areas get the relief passed on to others. So at least everybody is getting in on this, excluding the West. So unfortunately for you folks living there, it's not looking too good. But yes, a powerful, this is a very chilly fall air that's going to come in, and it's still not fall. Meteorologically, fall starts September 1st. Astronomically, it starts September 21st. Since this is a weather channel, I go by the standards of the meteorological one, so we are still in summer on August 27th, and notice that it won't really be feeling like that across many of these areas. By Wednesday, Thursday of this next week, this cool air mass moves out of the plains, the Great Lakes, Northeast, still lingering across the south, so that will feel nice, and that will continue dwindling away as we see a potentially a stifling heat wave develop across the same areas that saw that cool down. And that's why, if you looked at my fall forecast outlook, this is what I was talking about. I think that there will be cool-offs, there will be cool-downs like the one we're going to be seeing in the next few days, but I think it's going to be mainly a hot pattern with cool downs in between, not a cold pattern with heat ups in between. You can see that heat returns, and it could be pretty extraordinary across some of these areas. And yeah, look at that. Look at those anomalies. Obviously, this is very far out. I don't think it probably won't be this ridiculous, but honestly, I do think it's going to be a very strong heat wave. There's some early signs of that into early September. If you look at some of these 2-meter temperature readings, they are absolutely ridiculous. Hopefully we don't get that. But enjoy the cool air when you do, because summer's not over, and it will probably be a long, prolonged fall. So let's take a look at some other models, like the European model with its 2-meter temperature anomaly, and see what it shows, just to give us a little bit more perspective, and not just show you one model like the GFS, though the GFS has been the best one and the most consistent, I'll say that right now. So again, just like the European, the GFS, the European does show a mix of warm and cool air, definitely warm air across the west and the plains developing prior to this cool down. But you can see the European isn't as defined with this cool down, also doesn't show as strong of a storm system. A little bit of warm air again from that upper plain heat wave gliding into the northeast and southeast by this upcoming weekend. And the European does show cool air, but it doesn't last for long, and it doesn't dig its way into the south very far. But again, I am leaning with the GFS because the European just has not been that good. What I do want to show you that will give me more confidence is looking at the ensemble forecast for the GFS. So this is a group of over 50 models combined, and their graphs are pretty much overlaid on top of each other, and it gives us a good look, because say the GFS is the only one that shows us cool down and the rest of the family is like, no, we're not seeing this, then that doesn't really give us much confidence. But if the family agrees with the GFS, then we are looking at something potentially noteworthy, and in this case, that's what's going to be happening. So again, notice that heat spreading from the plains into the central and eastern United States by this upcoming late week. A little bit of cool air lingering across the northeast from some showers and cloud cover. That's going to be swept up and replaced with a little bit of warm air on Saturday, Sunday. But again, that cool down quickly following afterwards, and you can see the GEFS ensemble is very, very well in agreement with each other, showing some, again, pretty dark anomalies, meaning a pretty good deviation from average. The Fahrenheit readings during the day are going to be in the 60s, 50s, 70s across many of these areas that have been dealing with hundreds and 90s. Unfortunately, the most recent model run only takes us out to 174 hours, so I'll just go one model run backwards. It doesn't matter though, because again, it shows the same thing. The confidence is pretty high with this one. The models have been consistent, and you can see that cool down divides that eastern United States into cool and the western United States with heat, and it lingers for a while, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, even the GFS ensembles show, but eventually you can see it does fade away and is replaced by warmth. So that is also consistent with what the GFS showed. Now again, how warm that warmth will be, no one knows. We'll have to wait and see. Looking at the 6 to 10 day outlook now from the Climate Prediction Center, this is a graphic that they always have every day. They update it, even on weekends. And notice that the 6 to 10 day forecast looks like kind of what the graphics we were looking at, and that's because, again, the models are very confident, and so the Climate Prediction Center shows a decent likelihood of almost 75 to 60% chance across the Midwest there, less as you go away from the epicenter of that cool down, but warmth across the west, as we discussed, and kind of lingering towards the south. If you look at the 6 to 10 day precipitation outlook, we see, again, as I was mentioning, the west, you will be hot, but at least you will be dealing with quite a bit of monsoon moisture, so you will be above average. Cool or drier where that cool off is, and that makes sense, and then a little bit more moisture towards the east. Again, that's mainly to do with tropical activity as the ocean is heating up, and that flow will be north to south, which also helps Hurricane Erin move away from the shore and not hit the United States this cold blast. So this cold blast is kind of like a savior, actually, in that sense. The 8 to 14 day outlook. So this is a little further out from the 25th through the 31st. We could see the Climate Prediction Center continues showing the below average temperatures. They're not very confident in it. Only around 30 to 40% chance, 50% chance showing the blue colors, but they're there. And notice warmer towards the south. I'm not sure how likely that will be, and then also warmth across the northwest. And then just like with the 6 to 10 day outlook, here is the 8 to 14 day outlook, but for precipitation. Notice the above average pattern for the west continues. So while we do have extreme heat, and normally that would be very concerning because of the wildfire threat, with above average precipitation, that should keep it down a bit. But at the same time, you can also argue that that means more thunderstorm chances and lightning could strike one of these areas. And often this rain across the west is very isolated, so some areas might get rain soaked, one area might get hit by a lightning bolt and get a wildfire. So we'll have to see. Still a little cause for concern with those high temperatures, and yeah, combined with that, that moisture. If it's widespread, that's good, but we'll see if that happens. The 8 to 14 day outlook for the Midwest and Great Lakes, again, staying drier, as cool air usually at this time of the year indicates drier, and honestly in any time of the year indicates drier conditions. Above average again across the eastern seaboard, mainly to do with the tropical activity. I wanted to quickly address the system, the actual storm system that's going to be driving this cool air down into the United States, and not so much the temperature outlook, which we already focused on in this video. And notice that at first this system isn't really well developed. There's batches of precipitation across Canada and the northern United States that look pretty disorganized, but again, with that cool air mass out ahead of it, a warm air mass, it creates more of a baroclinic zone, and this thing spins off into a pretty strong system. And you can see that the system is very large, around 1,500 miles in width, and as it spins away across southern Canada, you could kind of clearly see that wind field as a low pressure. It's a really large one. So low pressure, there's a high pressure helping it spin up here, and then a high pressure behind it. So it's kind of producing a wind field in this direction, and that is allowing for a lot of this wind to bring that cooler air down, cooled off from again the Canadian area, and that develops a pretty powerful cold front. We'll have to watch for severe weather across the northeast, southeastern Canada there on Sunday. But behind that, we do definitely see a drier and cooler pattern by a lot. Maybe even some potentially some lake effect showers developing there with the first cool air mass across the warm lakes. That's not unheard of to see some lake effect showers in August and September. Tropical activity, as I mentioned, will have to be monitored for sure. But yeah, once that system passes through, the models do quiet things out by a little bit. Activity will obviously return, but yeah, definitely quieter than what we've been dealing with. So thank you so much for watching, and I will keep you guys updated, and hopefully you'll learn something new, and I'll see you in the next video. See ya. Bye.